Yo guys, today I'm going to take a look at the wheel settings I'm using on my Fanatec CSL DD and GT DD Pro. These settings should make your wheel feel a little bit more responsive. So let's not mess about and jump straight in. When you first boot up F122, you should head over to the Calibration menu. Here you can check all the functions on your wheel are working correctly. You can find this menu under the Controls, Vibration and Force Feedback menu. Jump in and perform a button test. You can do this simply by pressing the right button in the bottom right of the screen. Then rotate your wheel from side to side, apply the throttle and brake, and check that all of the values are reaching 100 in the bars on the right hand side. Within the calibration settings themselves, you don't really need to change anything if you're using a Fanatec wheel. The only thing I would check is your dead zone. Increasing this increases how much you need to push a pedal or turn the steering wheel to create an input in game. If your button test is registering an input without you pressing the pedal or turning the wheel, increasing your dead zone will remove this constant input. For my Fanatec Club Sport pedals, I had to increase the throttle dead zone by around 5, as it was registering a little bit of throttle input, even when I wasn't touching the pedal. Next up, head over to the force feedback settings. This is where you can fine tune how your wheel behaves while racing. Larger values here will increase the vibration and force feedback that you feel through your wheel. I've been using the 8Nm GT DD Pro and CSL DD Fanatec wheels, and having vibration and force feedback strength at 90 seems about spot on. If you're using a more powerful DD1 or DD2, you can lower this a touch if you find the force feedback too strong. I've set the on-track effects to 30, which is the same as the rumble strip effects. These give a good amount of feedback when hitting the curbs and bumps around the different tracks. And then I've lowered the off-track effects to 20. I don't like having off-track effects too high, as if you do, your wheel will just shake itself apart when you hit some gravel. Keeping it lower makes it slightly easier to get back on track. I've lowered the wheel damper right down to 0, which should be the case on all Fanatec wheels. You can control this from your wheel directly, so no point having it on here. Then turn understeer enhance off. This will simulate a loss of grip by making your wheel feel incredibly light. It feels strange and isn't realistic, so turn it off unless you're learning where the edge of the grip is. Then I've lowered the wheel rotation slightly to 340 degrees. Realistically, this should be at 360 if you want to emulate a real-world F1 car. However, in F122 there's a slight response delay when turning the wheel. So lowering this to 340 degrees helps remove that and make the wheel slightly more energetic. With Fanatec wheels you can also change a lot of settings to the steering wheel itself. These affect the wheelbase directly and can work with or override your in-game settings. You can see the settings I'm using on screen now. To change these, simply enter the tuning menu on your Fanatec wheel. It's normally accessed by pressing either a combination of buttons or the tuning button, depending on which wheel you're using. Then you can scroll through the settings directly on your wheel and change them. With the wheel settings, I've played about a bit from last year. I've matched the sensitivity to 340 degrees on the wheel itself and set the overall strength on the wheel to 100. I have played about with the natural damper and friction, increasing those over last year's settings. Then I've lowered inertia completely to 0, as this year's game doesn't seem to need it. Most other settings are set to 100 or 0, which is pretty much standard. It's also highly recommended you spend some time mapping the buttons on your Fanatec wheel. You can create a completely custom layout on your steering wheel, setting different buttons and inputs to perform different tasks in F122. For example, I'm using the McLaren GT3 V2 wheel right now, and you can see my button mapping. I've mapped the rotational dials to control my brake bias and on-throttle diff. This gives me quick access to increasing or decreasing these settings while racing without going through multiple menus. I've also played about with my other buttons to create a layout that I'm comfortable with, and this replicates my wheel layout for most games. To change the button mapping, simply scroll down to the input you wish to change, click on it and then press the button or the input you wish to use, as simple as that. These settings should give you the most realistic and immersive experience in F122 with your Fanatec wheel. Many people have been reporting their wheel not feeling as good in F122 as it did in previous games, and these settings are designed to combat that. Let me know in the comments below what settings you're using, and hit that like button on this video because it really helps the YouTube algorithm. If you want more F122 content, subscribe and hit that alert bell as well, because I'll be releasing a lot more, including car setup videos, how-to guides and races in the coming days. But for now guys, I'll see you on track.